On Wednesday, President Biden signed 9 executive orders on his first day in office in order to get his administration off to a quick start. I will read to you one of the executive orders as follows. Executive Order on Advancing Racial Equity and Support for Underserved Communities through the Federal Government. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered. Section 1. Policy. Equal opportunity is the bedrock of American democracy, and our diversity is one of our country's greatest strengths. But for too many, the American dream remains out of reach. Entrenched disparities in our laws and public policies and in our public and private institutions have often denied that equal opportunity to individuals and communities. Our country faces converging economic, health, and climate crises that have exposed and exacerbated inequities, while a historic movement for justice has highlighted the unbearable human costs of systemic racism. Our nation deserves an ambitious whole-of-government equity agenda that matches the scale of the opportunities and challenges that we face. It is therefore the policy of my administration that the federal government should pursue a comprehensive approach to advancing equity for all, including people of color and others who have been historically underserved, marginalized, and adversely affected by persistent poverty and inequality. Affirmatively advancing equity, civil rights, racial justice, and equal opportunity is the responsibility of the whole of our government. Because advancing equity requires a systemic approach to embedding fairness in decision-making processes, executive departments and agencies must recognize and work to redress inequities in their policies and programs that serve as barriers to equal opportunity. By advancing equity across the federal government, we can create opportunities for the improvement of communities that have been historically underserved, which benefits everyone. For example, an analysis shows that closing racial gaps in wages, housing credit, lending opportunities, and access to higher education would amount to an additional $5 trillion in gross domestic product in the American economy over the next 5 years. The federal government's goal in advancing equity is to provide everyone with the opportunity to reach their full potential. Consistent with these aims, each agency must assess whether and to what extent its programs and policies perpetuate systemic barriers to opportunities and benefits for people of color and other underserved groups. Such assessments will better equip agencies to develop policies and programs that deliver resources and benefits equitably to all. Section 2. Definitions. For purposes of this order, A, the term equity means the consistent and systemic, fair, just, and impartial treatment of all individuals, including individuals who belong to underserved communities that have been denied such treatment, such as Black, Latino, and Indigenous and Native American persons, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, and other persons of color. Members of religious minorities, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer LGBTQ+ persons, persons with disabilities, persons who live in rural areas, and persons otherwise adversely affected by persistent poverty or inequality. B, the term underserved communities refers to populations sharing a particular characteristic as well as geographic communities that have been systemically denied a full opportunity to participate in aspects of economic, social, and civic life, as exemplified by the list in the preceding definition of equity. Section 3. Role of the Domestic Policy Council. The role of the White House Domestic Policy Council, DPC, is to coordinate the formulation and implementation of my administration's domestic policy objectives. Consistent with this role, the DPC will coordinate efforts to embed equity principles, policies, and approaches across the federal government. This will include efforts to remove systemic barriers to and provide equal access to opportunities and benefits, identify communities the federal government has underserved, and develop policies designated to advance equities for those communities. The DPC-led interagency process will ensure that these efforts are made in coordination with the directors of the National Security Council and the National Economic Council. There are further sections to this executive order, however, that is the extent of what I will cover in this video. Further reading is in the description below.